We had to wait nearly 3 years for the latest Marvel offering, and boy is it sprinkled with Easter eggs throughout the flick. Sony Pictures isn't done milking this nerd cow yet. You'd know if you'd seen the movie. And if you haven't already, here's a heads up, there are plenty of spoilers ahead. You can't really escape them, so tread carefully while we get straight into it. Don't go away, because this is gonna be a video you're not gonna wanna miss even a second of. First up, School for Gifted Children. It all begins with Michael Morbius's tragic origin story that's established in the film's opening scenes. As he grows up in a medical facility with other children with the same rare blood condition as him, it's the first time he meets Lucien, who also goes by the nickname Milo, and the two immediately become best friends. But when Milo's blood dialysis machine breaks down and there isn't a nurse or doctor in sight, it's up to Morbius to save the day. Luckily, he replaces a conductive piece in the machine with a spring from a ballpoint pen, which restores it to perfect working order. Yay! However, when Dr. Nichols learns how smart Morbius is behind his moody surface, he reveals that he may be able to send him to a school for gifted children in New York to better hone his abilities. Okay, is there a school that comes to your mind? Anyone familiar with Marvel Comics or the X-Men franchise would remember that phrase, because Xavier's School for Gifted Children is the private school in Westchester, New York, where mutants go to get an education, as well as learn more about their superpowers. It's unlikely the X-Men are spending time together in a lab with symbiotes, but it's possible that when we see a full reunion of the Sonyverse, a mutant or two might make an appearance. Next up, Horizon Labs. If you've seen Morbius, you probably heard several references to Horizon Labs that you probably didn't quite understand, but it's what the Marvel geeks would consider a deep cut. This is where Morbius looks after children who have the same blood disorder as he does, and conducts research into curing the condition as well. However, what many don't know, Horizon Labs has also played an important role in the Spider-Man comics over the last decade, as Peter Parker worked there during Dan Slott's stint. It's a place where gifted scientists work on cutting-edge technology and ideas without having to pitch them to a board of directors. Horizon Labs first appears in Amazing Spider-Man issue 648, and it's run by Max Modell, one of Peter's scientific heroes. In the comics, Morbius also works for Horizon, and he's the one who creates the serum that saves everyone in New York when the events of Spider Island turn everyone into giant arachnids. But he isn't the only villain to roam the laboratory. Otto Octavius, aka Dr. Octopus, also worked for the company. After transferring his consciousness into Peter's brain in Amazing Spider-Man number 700, he uses Horizon to develop new technology for his own career, but eventually fails to do so, of course. Up next, Murnau. A key sequence in the movie sees Dr. Morbius believing that he's just a few steps away from discovering his cure and cleansing his blood. The only catch, his plan is illegal, so he hires a cargo freighter to avoid getting caught by the law. Anywho, it all goes south when Morbius transforms into a blood-sucking monster and slaughters the gang of mercenaries hired to protect him. Awkward. Now this is where it gets interesting. In his comics, the ship was called Zenith, but this is a film. This egg is why fans should start showing some love to director Daniel Espinosa. Why? He changed the ship's name to the Murnau. That's an odd name, but what does it have to do with the Morbius Easter egg? F.W. Murnau, have you heard of him? In the 1920s, he was a German-born director whose main contribution to cinema was Nosferatu, the OG vampire film that scared the hell out of people back in the day. Did you know, to add to the creepy factor, Max Schreck only blinks once in this film? That's how it's done, Daniel Day-Lewis. Now we have The Thing in San Francisco. If it wasn't already clear that Morbius takes place in the same universe as the massively successful Venom franchise, the film explicitly makes it clear a couple of times throughout Morbius's adventure. When the authorities discover Murnau with several drained bodies on board, FBI agent Rodriguez remarks to Agent Shroud that they haven't had a strange case like this since That Thing in San Francisco. It's a clear reference to Eddie Brock and Venom, because the symbiotic anti-hero isn't exactly a well-kept secret on the streets. In the 2021 sequel, Let There Be Carnage, the lethal hero gets into even more trouble when he faces off against the twisted Cletus Cassidy. When Morbius takes over an underground lab used by a counterfeit gang, he mocks one of them by saying, "I am Venom," indicating that the word Venom has spread across the country, though it's unclear what the general public knows about the symbiote aside from the fact that he occasionally eats criminals in San Francisco. Francisco. It'll be interesting to see if Venom and Morbius ever share the screen, but since Sony seems dead set on making a Sinister Six film at some point, we're keeping our fingers crossed. Up next, Spider-Man: The Murderer? Sony did a good job offering several clever Morbius Easter eggs in the trailer as well. Not like they didn't have 912 days to think about it. Anyway, there was one that was expanded in view during the film. When Dr. Morbius pulls a Houdini from the local jail and marches through back alleys to remain off the grid, that's where the graffiti-covered Spider-Man note comes into view. If you look at the image for a moment, you might think Spidey is being called out for killing Mysterio. If you look closely, you'll notice Peter's suit resembles the Raimi-verse, starring Tobey Maguire. Now it kinda gets confusing because there's already speculation and evidence that Morbius occurs across the country from Venom, and that is actually TASM with Andrew Garfield. So, is it a multiverse thing, a sloppy edit, or an Easter egg? We can't really say. Next, a Russian gentleman. This might not go down too well with the UN, but one of the Morbius Easter eggs was a Russian relic of joyous vodka-induced comic relief. When Milo is at his NYC apartment in the film, surrounded by guards, he reveals the need for protection due to some Russian gentleman, to Dr. Nikos. Well, it's very likely that the mysterious Russian gentleman being spoke of here is actually Kraven the Hunter. Last summer, Marvel announced the casting of Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven the Hunter, and that Easter egg has just opened the door for several of them. Kraven's real name is Sergei Kravinov, and he first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man number 15 in 1963. That name is unmistakably Russian, and we can safely assume Spidey's major domo killer is on his way to us. P.S. Morbius is also a foe of the Daywalker Blade, and Eternals introduced Mahershala Ali to the MCU, and that, DC Comics and Warner, is how you create smart links. Up next, Black Cat. The Daily Bugle also appears throughout the film to reassure viewers that it is still Spider-Man universe, and it has multiple Easter eggs on its front pages. A reference on the Daily Bugle's front page says Black Cat, friend or foe, which appears to establish Felicia Hardy's existence here as well. Felicity Jones, who starred in Rogue One, also played the character in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. She briefly appears as one of the Oscorp assistants until Harry Osborn recognizes her and recruits her as his personal assistant. Black Cat is an iconic character in the Spider-Man mythos, owing to her role as one of Spider-Man's love interests, alongside Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy. The burglar first appears in 1979's Amazing Spider-Man, issue 194. When she hatches a plot to save her dying father from prison, it also establishes that everyone who crosses her attracts her ill luck, a concept that's based on the popular superstition surrounding actual black cats. It's totally possible that Black Cat may appear in a future film, and we know that Sony has already considered the possibility of showing more of Felicia Hardy on the big screen. Next, Chameleon's Great Escape. But wait, there's another Daily Bugle headline mentioning another member of Spidey's rogue gallery. On the front page of the Bugle, Chameleon's Great Escape implies that Dmitry Smerdyakov has already had a run-in with the authorities and has even managed to escape prison. Although many of the web-slinger's enemies are inspired by animals, Chameleon does not dress like the Lizard. Instead, he's a master of disguise who can impersonate anyone to commit robberies and assassinations. Surprisingly, fans have previously seen a live-action version of Chameleon since he appears as one of Nick Fury's associates in Spider-Man: Far From Home. The white mask-wearing villain will next be seen in Fred Hetchinger's solo film, Kraven the Hunter, alongside Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's worth noting that the Chameleon is Kraven's half-brother, so we're hoping that dynamic will be explored in the 2023 film. That's all for today. See you in the next one.